All right, welcome to Bet the Edge. I'm Jay Croucher here with Drew Dinsick. Today we're going to talk US Open on the women's side and then a couple of MVP awards markets in MVP and Coach of the Year. I've got a German Marquez jersey hanging behind me today to congratulate the Colorado Rockies for holding Ronald Acuna to 1 for 5 with a single last night. Let me tell you, Drew, I don't know what the government's up to at the moment, but I need an executive order to prevent Ronald Acuna Jr. from setting foot in the state of Colorado again anytime soon, because those at-bats are absolutely terrifying. I feel like a single or a walk is honestly a win. The way the ball flies in Coors Field. But anyway, enough about German Marquez.
I gotta tell you a funny story. I had the screenshot ready to go. I was really hoping he was going to go 0 for 5, and that would have been nice. But yes. that last at bat single was a bummer. But
it was.
So it goes.
Yes, we'll
better than Homer, I guess.
And and we'll run after. He bet the greatest game in the history of baseball on Monday night. So it was good to come down 3 for 10 the last two games with only singles. Got through that. Now big series coming up against the Dodgers, which will be fun. I mean, maybe might be devastating. We'll see. Let's talk US Open women's outright odds. Iga Swiatek is plus 225, as you would expect. Arena Sabalenka is going back and forth with her double faults issue, but she's plus 400. Coco Gauff, after surviving round 1, looked a lot better in round 2. She's plus 550. Elena Rybakina keeps going under the radar, but seems to be playing pretty well. She's plus 650. Jess Pegula, who the market has fallen in love with, I have not really, but she's 8-1. And then you have Mukova Javur, Vondrasova, 3 of the past 4 Grand Slam finalists. And then you get into Bencic and Samsonova, who cost me money every tournament. What do you make of the board at the moment? Is there anyone who's going to threaten Iga?
Well, of this list, the women that are going to cost you money are Bencic, Samsonov, Ons Jabeur, and Madison Keys. The women's side of this draw is shaping up to be one of the more, there's an ebb and flow here, Jay. It's shaping up to be one of the most chalky quarterfinals that I can ever remember, because the women who are in form and who are the best in the world are playing all of them very, very, very well right now. And so on one hand, you're like, well, we're not going to get any long shots home in the quarters. Yeah, that's true. But the quarterfinals themselves are setting up to be truly epic. Your number 1 and 3rd picks here for the US Open, which I completely agree with, are Iga and Coco Gauff. They are set for a collision course in the first quarterfinal, which would be an incredible rematch of the Cincy semis. For me, the advantage there is Iga, which is why that's the only bet I've made for any of the women's winners. And, you can basically get pretty close to the same price that I played. I think the best number I got on Iga right after we saw the draw was in like the plus 280 range. So plus 225. You haven't lost so much value there. Coco Gauff, I will say, she was staring down the barrel of a gun of a very, very tough draw. But Daniel Collins has been dispatched by Mertens, and Kvitova dispatched by Wozniacki. Decent chance Jen Brady could actually beat Wozniacki, which would actually set up Gauff for pretty clean wins in round 3 and round 4, in my opinion. So she may be a little bit less damage, a little bit less fatigue, a little less tested than I was concerned she would be once we get to that quarterfinal stage, which could turn that one into just the de facto final. I know that's disrespectful to Sabalenka, who's playing really well right now, disrespectful to Pegula and Rybakina, all very, very accomplished and outstanding women's tennis players. Q2, which looked pre-draw like the one you were going to catch some real crazy long shot potential, is also shaping up relatively chalky. If I had to say it right now, we're going to get Rybakina versus Mukova in the quarterfinals, which was your odds on most likely second quarterfinal when we started this. It is worth noting Rybakina is still a little bit of a question mark. She came into this tournament with lots of fitness questions. She played one match against Marta Kostyuk, who just decided not to show up at all, and then she got a walkover in her second match. So we really don't know what to expect. If she has to play a tough 3-setter in the heat, can she withstand that? Not obvious to me that answer is obviously yes. So of sort of the brand name players, the one that I would be the least excited to back to get to a semifinal would be Rybakina. Plus, it's a really interesting clash of styles. If that is your second quarterfinal, Rybakina, Mukova, I mean, that is like must watch. It is worth also noting that Mukova, she's got an awesome match tomorrow set up against Taylor Townsend. If you have not been following the Taylor Townsend story, she's one of the best women's doubles players in the world. Her game is unique. It's fun to watch. She has incredible hands, incredible touch, incredible skills at the net. And so that is an awesome contrast of styles between her and Mukova. So that's going to be the best match on the women's side tomorrow, in my opinion. Q3, we're looking at a collision course between Pegula and Vondrousova. Vondrousova has the easier path to get there, which is why I think if you have a Q3 Vondrousova price in pocket, I wouldn't get too nervous just yet. Pegula could get run into trouble here in the next couple of rounds. Samsonova, your girl, is probably the one that you would have the most faith would give her a test. And then Q4 right now, I'm against Ons today. I'm against, and again, if you're listening to this, that match has already happened. So we'll know, we don't know yet if Ons is in or out of the round 3. But against Ons with a bet on Noskova today. And then I like what I'm seeing from the Chinese up-and-comer who I've backed tournament in, tournament out, waiting for her breakout, Zheng Qinwen. She has come through round 2 with a really impressive third set stamp win against Kai Kanepi, who is a pest. And I think she can actually get to the quarterfinals, but is probably drawing dead against Sabalenka. Sabalenka is the most interesting kind of handicap on tour right now because you mentioned the double fault issues. She just in general, I saw it boots on the ground, sitting right above her box, right behind her as she was serving for, in that second set in round 1. And I'll tell you, man, she makes some mistakes that are just inexcusable. She has some tactical errors that are just, indefensible. And if she is gonna, leave the door open, then a player like Zheng Qinwen can absolutely come through. It took a little bit of her to win Q4 at 10-1, but that actually just kind of complements a bet I've already made on Sabalenka stage of elimination semifinals. So that's my overall read. I think it's still very possible that our pre-tournament predictions of Iga over Vondrousova are still where we're headed here. But boy, oh boy, are we set for probably the most epic round of women's quarterfinals in slams of recent years.
Yeah. Well, it was your prediction that Vondrousova is going to make the final. I'm not on the Vondrousova bandwagon. I don't think she's that good. So go to my grave not understanding how she actually won Wimbledon, which still doesn't seem like a reality. Not winning Wimbledon without having to play Rybakina, Sabalenka, Iga Swiatek, or an Ons Jabeur whose limbs worked. So she was able to, but she took care of business, I guess. To me, the most interesting thing in the outright market is just how Elena Rybakina is being priced, where it's like the market, and even match to match, it's like the market is pricing in that there's definitely something wrong with her. And I know she didn't get a test in round 1, but she seemed to move fine and she seemed to look right. And then she gets the walkover in round 2. So I think it just has to be a good thing that she's gotten through to round 3 of the US Open, losing 3 games on the way. So if she is right, then she should be fresh. And particularly when you think that, Iga and Coco have to play each other in the quarterfinals, so one of them is done before the semi. Sabalenka is kind of all over the place, where she got through the Australian Open the demons are reared a little bit, but she got through and won, completely bottles the French Open semi in just unforgivable fashion against Mukova, and then was fine against Ons in the semi of Wimbledon. I think she bottled that. She just lost some key points and ended up losing the match. It happens, but she is definitely fragile as a second favorite. So yeah, Rybakina to me is the player to watch. Particularly because she doesn't have to go through Iga and Coco to get to a semi-final. So she's the one I'm most interested in. Last one before we move on to the NFL. In terms of a long shot, I'll give you 3 names, and then you can choose one. They're all in the kind of 33-1 to, if you shop around, 60-1 range. Bencic, Samsonova, and Zheng. Who do you think is most likely to win the US Open of those 3?
So, man, this is hard. They all have elite upside. I'm going to say Samsonova's third choice for me because I worry about her health and fitness always.
Okay,
Bencic is second for me because I worry about her keeping her head against super elite competition. And Zheng is going to be number one for me, largely because she's got a killer instinct. When Iga was just untouchable at the French Open on clay, Zheng took a set from her in a tiebreak, and for a lot of that match was the better player. And so I think I've seen enough elite upside in random slams from Zheng to have a little bit more confidence that she could surprise here. But again, like she's the only one of those three that I think is getting to the quarterfinals, which also helps. so yeah, sure. Her little section I think is the softest.
I mean, yeah, she gets. I mean, it's not a walkover, but getting to face Lucia Bronzetti in the third round is pretty about as good as it gets.
Yeah,
and then I mean, we'll see. We'll see with Ons Jabeur, who would be her most likely fourth round opponent if she's still alive. If you're listening to this, but yeah, Zheng certainly. I mean, she's just got everything in terms of her game. She's got the power. Mm-hmm. She has a really unique kind of topspin forehand as well. She's got a big serve. She's got it all, and it's just a matter of when she puts it together, which hopefully is this couple of weeks in New York.
Yeah, she is way taller than she looks on TV too.
Yep,
she's big. I had no idea how formidable she was, but she's ready to go play point guard for the Knicks.
There you go. Well, yeah, she might be taller than Jalen Brunson. All right. Roto World Draft Week is officially here. All week long, we've got drafts, articles, and more from all your favorite Roto World talent and special guests. Get all you need to dominate your upcoming fantasy drafts. Go to nbcsports.com/fantasy to see the schedule of all that is happening this week and use the code CHAMP23 to save 20% at checkout and receive a $10 Fanatics gift card. Just got out of a fantasy draft, actually, with producer Adam in a 2-quarterback lead. A very questionable approach at quarterback. Just kept on waiting and ended up with Bryce Young. But, let's talk about MVP, which Bryce Young probably isn't going to win. Patrick Mahomes is the favorite, plus 600. Joe Burrow, plus 700. Josh Allen, plus 750 as your top three. Justin Herbert, Jalen Hurts, Lamar Jackson, Trevor Lawrence, they follow. We've talked a lot about Mahomes as the rightful favorite, and I think he should be much shorter than plus 600. Is there anyone in that second tier after Mahomes that you're interested in?
So the way I look at this market, and we talked about yesterday about how defensive player of the year we see as a relatively closed market. This is maybe even more closed. I think there are 6 men with a realistic chance to win because you have to combine elite statistical output with team success to get this award at the quarterback position. That is the rubric here. There's nothing more that really goes into it. And everyone not named Pat Mahomes is also now facing the uphill battle of, to win this award, you have to outperform Mahomes specifically because he is locked in as QB1 in the minds of every voter, in the minds of every analyst, in the minds of every fan right now. Mahomes is one with a bullet. So there are only 5 other men that I think have a realistic shot to do it. And in order, they are Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, Jalen Hurts, Justin Herbert, and Trevor Lawrence. I don't think that realistically Lamar Jackson can do enough in terms of team wins, just because there are too many questions, injuries, and just overall strength of that roster for me to think that the Ravens can surprise you and steal a 1 seed or even win the North at this point. So for me, at least, it's a pretty narrow market here. Trevor Lawrence is maybe the only, like, if you want me to make a case at all for why to include him in the 6, we've talked about how there's an outside chance just because they have, among the weaker schedules in the AFC, among the challengers, because they get to play everybody in the AFC South twice. That right there gives them, in my opinion, an inside track to get a 1 seed and to just have the team success to go along with what I think is going to be a pretty impressive statistical leap for him this year, considering the weapons that are available for the Jaguars. And, he gets to go head to head against all of these guys, two of them, in my opinion, in somewhat favorable conditions. I like that Mahomes has to go down to Florida early in the season. I like that you get the Chiefs before they get into the groove and really kind of figure out roles and responsibilities of all the wide receivers. And before the defense really kind of comes together, because the Chiefs defense absolutely turns into an arc. Maybe no Chris Jones in that game now too. So, you're getting the Chiefs when you want them early in the schedule. You're getting the Bills in London after you've been there for a week. And so I think if I'm making a case for anyone outside of Mahomes, which is very tough, I'm going to make it for Trevor Lawrence because, again, the Jags, I think, have a track to get to the 1 seed. That if you have head-to-head wins on your resume against Mahomes and Allen, then I think you're cooking with gas.
Yep, I think Lawrence is on the short list of guys who have the talent and upside to win. Josh Allen to me is an interesting one because he's kind of like the Luka Doncic MVP guy every year, where he's always close to the favorite, but hasn't really come close to winning. I don't think Josh Allen. I mean, last year he was certainly in the mix. I think was favorite for a time. But the thing with Allen is just that he may well be the second best quarterback in the NFL, but he doesn't have a statistical profile that lends itself well to winning MVP just because he throws so many picks and he just throws the ball up for grabs. And touchdown to interception ratio is one of the biggest factors in MVP. So that gives me a little bit of pause with Allen and why I would have Burrow neck and neck with him. I don't really think anyone on the board is currently a bet outside of Mahomes. I do think Jackson can win, but I wouldn't be interested at 14-1. Okay. The other thing with Lamar Jackson is, as much as we think about the health, he just hasn't been as good since 2019. He hasn't been that level of player. I think last year was probably the closest that he's been since 2019, but we still kind of have to see it from him in a way. I don't think there's any long shot that is appealing at price. Last year, there were two guys who were very easy fits for, the Mahomes came out of nowhere to win. It's like 50-60-1. Lamar Jackson was similar. Matt Ryan was similar. It was a bit of a different case. He was a bit more of a known player. But last year, there were two guys who kind of fit that mold in Jalen Hurts and Trey Lance. Yeah. Obviously, didn't work out for Trey Lance. Worked out pretty well for Jalen Hurts. I guess the candidates for that this year would be Brock Purdy, Jordan Love, Kenny Pickett. Like, I just don't really see it with them. I don't think those guys even have the upside right now that, I mean, at least in my head, I thought Trey Lance had last year. No one there is particularly appealing. So I think Mahomes is the bet.
You know what you nailed also with those, because I agree with your three. All three of those guys, the coaches will get the credit more than the player. And the team success is going to be a little bit of also the defense had a ton to do with this, as opposed to it was the quarterback that got them these wins, right? So I agree with you, but that would be my short list as well. Also, you're reminding me, I bet Trey Lance last year MVP. That lasted all of 6 quarters. Actually, no, but that lasted all of 1 quarter. If we're being honest, one quarter. It was over. It was over pretty quick. I think health of Brock Purdy is another kind of asterisk, I guess. Let me ask you this about the MVP award. The NFL did something weird scheduling wise. I've noticed this now, kind of breaking down everybody's schedules independent, right? You look at every kind of realistic top contender for the Super Bowl this year in both the NFC and the AFC, and there is an apparent round robin of these teams from Thanksgiving until Christmas, right? You look at every single one of these schedules and you're like, oh my gosh, look at Phillies, November, December. They got to play bang, bang, bang. Look at the Bills, look at the Niners, look at the Cowboys, right? The idea that all of these teams are going to basically play each other and sort each other out in the minds of who is the best before we get to the end of the regular season, right when voters are considering these awards markets, I think is going to have an impact ultimately on how this goes. And so I think looking a little bit carefully, and particularly, I'm not warning you, Jay, who I know likes to have Mahomes, but the idea that he's at a rest disadvantage in a lot of these games is a little concerning. And I think, kind of following the health and just in general, like before we get to that point, just kind of gauging what are the temperature of some of these teams, what are the health of these teams before they get to the part of the season where this ultimately they all play each other and it gets decided. I think is going to be key. My question for you is, if everybody's just beating each other, like, is there, does that open the door for a player like Lawrence, right? Because he's not really kind of in this grinder where he's going to be spending his, December playing, against all these elite competition.
Yeah, potentially. And I think we saw last year before Jalen Hurts got injured, I still think Mahomes would have won even if Jalen Hurts didn't get injured. But like MVP, you don't have to be considered the best player in the sport to win the award. It's the award for who has the best season. I don't think anyone thought Matt Ryan was the best player in football in 2016, but he had the best season.
Yeah, he wasn't.
He was not. But at the same time, like, here are the quarterbacks who won MVP from 2017 from 2007 to 2014. Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, Peyton Manning, Aaron Rodgers. Like, it's just kind of generally the best players. The other thing with quarterback is it's not like superstar quarterbacks really have random just years where they're bad. Like, it's a pretty stable position from that sense. Like Mahomes 2 years ago, it was a down year by his standards. He was still excellent. He was still a borderline MVP candidate. Outside of that, he's been an elite MVP candidate every season. So I don't know if there is turmoil in terms of who's winning games and losing games at the end of the season, and it's all kind of clustered together. I think it'll just go to who has the best statistical resume, and the best statistical resume is likely to be Patrick Mahomes. I just think he's the bet. I think no one's going to have any issue as well giving Patrick Mahomes back-to-back MVPs, which he's never won, which Aaron Rodgers just did 2 years ago, finished off going back-to-back. So certainly the 1 seed carries a lot of weight, and I think that's where most people start their MVP pricing, is looking at who's going to get the 1 seed, because that's such a tie break. So it makes you the story of the season. It creates separation between you and other players in your conference. At the same time, if the Bills who got the 1 seed last year, Mahomes was still going to beat Allen. So I don't think that's necessarily the end of the world. Mahomes is the only bet for me at the moment in that market. All right. Before we get to Coach of the Year, a reminder that Saturday, September 2nd at 11 a.m. Eastern, Vaughn Dalzell, Brad Thomas, and Eric Froton are answering your college football betting questions for week 1. All you have to do is tune into our NBC Sports YouTube page to hear more of their thoughts on NBC's first Big Ten Saturday night game and much more. All right, Coach of the Year. There's been a bit of movement in this market now. Dan Campbell has kind of separated himself as the favorite, which I don't necessarily disagree with, but no interest at all getting involved at plus 800. Sean Payton, Matt Eberflus, Arthur Smith, Robert Saleh, Matt LaFleur. They round out the top 6 favorites. You've talked a lot about Mike Tomlin and how you like him at price, which is in the 20 to 25 to 1 range, which I agree is still too big and a very sound bet. I think, particularly if you get 25 to 1, I think you should be half that price or at least close. I've aligned myself with Matt LaFleur, which is in a way I've aligned myself with Jordan Love, which is to say I don't really know what's going to happen there, but there is upside, and I think LaFleur will get the credit. Have you made any other bets in this market?
I am riding solo with Tomlin at the moment. Good friend of mine, though, who does not agree with me. Okay. Like, emphatically does not agree with me. Made a good point, which is this is a really crowded market.
Sure.
There are 12, I think, coaches who have a realistic chance here. That is more than last year by a meaningful amount. The case for Tomlin, by the way, if you haven't already heard this, and if you haven't, then welcome to the first time you're ever listening to our content. They're the fourth choice right now to win a very, very flat AFC North, in my opinion. He is a guy that everyone loves giving credit to when the team is winning. I think the offense clearly primed to take a step forward in year 2 with Pickett, and the defense is a top 5 unit on paper and is deep, can withstand injuries. Offensive line getting better, elite weapons to work with now between Johnson and Pickens, in my opinion. So, ultimately, I think the Steelers finding success and kind of being the surprise team in the AFC playoff picture is going to be enough for him to get consideration. And he's never won this award. And I think if we beat that drum hard enough in the month of December this year and the Steelers are winning in the AFC North, I think this is realistically his to lose. The other guys with realistic consideration, though, and this is a long list. You mentioned LaFleur. He's absolutely in consideration. Shanahan even is in consideration, even though they won a million games last year. And he's realistically, it's going to be tough to increase his win total by much, his win total by that much relative to last year. But, he's absolutely getting the credit if the Niners are a 15-win team. And the list again goes: Arthur Smith is live, Dan Campbell is live, Eberflus is live, although I don't think the Bears are winning. I don't think the Bears are finishing above 500 personally. And then, you can go down to some of these long shots and kind of really realistically construct a case where, the Commanders find their way into a playoff picture. Is Ron Rivera getting consideration? Possibly. I think the idea of if the Seahawks steal the NFC West, is Pete Carroll in the conversation? Possibly. That you can make a case for so many players that this is a super crowded market. My flag is planted on Tomlin. It's largely because I believe that their odds to win the AFC North are shorter than market, and that is enough for me, I think, to get him absolutely a seat at the table in the discussion, if not be the outright leader once we get to the end of the season. So, do you have any new thoughts on this, or anyone that you thought was live that you're starting to kind of put a line through at price?
I was a lot higher on Mike McDaniel a couple of months ago before all the players started getting injured.
Great
also
point.
Just being kind of more fully absorbing how difficult that schedule is, which in a way will give him the opportunity to beat other candidates. And, if he wins that division and gets the 1 seed, then I think he is extremely live to win. But I don't like their chances to win the division or get the 1 seed as much as I did before when they had Jalen Ramsey and co. The one thing I would say about this market is I've had a lot of comments from people like just putting a line through a bunch of guys. And I think that's kind of fraught with peril in this market in a way that it's not in, say, the NBA Coach of the Year market, because it's the NFL. It's such a small sample. It's 17 games, and that creates more variance than in the NBA, where, for instance, I was going to say Dwayne Casey. Dwayne Casey definitely can't win Coach of the Year this year because he's not in the league anymore. Monty Williams, I just don't think he can win Coach of the Year on that Detroit team, because the barrier to entry in that market is, being a top 5, 6 seed, and I don't really see Detroit getting there. Whereas in the NFL, like right now, the guy with the longest odds in the market, alone on an island by himself, is Todd Bowles. And I don't think Todd Bowles is winning Coach of the Year. At the same time, he plays in a terrible division. He's got a quarterback in Baker Mayfield who was the number 1 pick and does have some elite NFL seasons on his resume. They still got Evans and Godwin. They still got some talent on that team. I don't think they're going to be very good, but there are worlds where that team in a bad division with an easy schedule, because they play in that division, flukes itself to, 12-5, and all of a sudden the Bucks are the 3 seed or whatever. Like, those worlds exist in a way that they don't in a sport that has 82 games or 162 games, I would say. So, look, I would say that the guys, more so than Bowles, who probably have an even harder time winning. Like, how does Kevin O'Connell win Coach of the Year after they won 13 games last year?
Yeah.
How does Andy Reid win Coach of the Year unless they go 17-0 or 16-1? And, a lot of these awards markets, they ignite through random things that change public sentiment. Like Marcus Smart won Defensive Player of the Year because there was a podcast, and then there was an article, and it got retweeted a lot. Then people started thinking about it. With Andy Reid, like maybe it could just ignite that. Oh, this is the Andy Reid year. This is the year we celebrate his achievements, because one big article gets written and it goes viral, and everyone starts thinking about it. And it's like, oh yeah, this is a pretty kind of amorphous, strange award. Let's give it to Andy Reid. But at the same time, like, you need so many things to go right. So I'd approach this market with an open mind, and the way to think about it is, who has upside to improve their win total by 4 or more games from the previous year, which is usually a prerequisite to win. Who can do that without having Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen or Joe Burrow or a superstar quarterback, so that the coach can be identified as the guy who gets the credit over the superstar quarterback, which is the thing that screwed Matt LaFleur all those years and allowed Kevin Stefanski to win with Baker Mayfield, Mike Vrabel to win with Ryan Tannehill, Brian Daboll to win with Daniel Jones, Bruce Arians on that Arizona team that had like Carson Palmer, and then he got hurt, and then it was random other guys. Like, those are the coaches that win. With all coach of the year markets, you need to be able to point to the coaching. And so with someone like Tomlin, it's just going to be, I think, very easy, because Kenny Pickett, no one thinks Kenny Pickett's a superstar. If you ask most people to list off the 20 best quarterbacks in the NFL, I don't think Pickett's really cracking that list. So those are the kind of guys to look for. Matt LaFleur as well is very much in that bucket. And just to round off this point, if we were crossing guys off last year, who would have been one of the 2 or 3 first guys that we crossed off? Is Pete Carroll. Pete Carroll would have been immediately crossed off, because their win total was like 5.5 as the Seahawks. Everyone wanted Drew Lock to be the starter. So Geno Smith, lowest upside guy you could possibly get. And then all of a sudden, I mean, on merit, he really had, I think, a top 3 or 4 case last year. So random stuff happens in this market. I think it's extremely biased by narrative and momentum at the end of the season, which is what I thought would sink Daboll, but apparently beating Sam Ehlinger created enough momentum for him. But again, and the last thing I'll say on this is, people are using Daboll as too much of a precedent. Daboll got 16 out of 50 votes. Like, Daboll
great point.
A very fractured field, and he's in New York, and I think there was a lot of circumstances that had to conspire to get him to 16 out of 50 votes, which happens to be enough to win. So, yeah, that's where I'm at with that market. Anything you want to add?
No, that was a great breakdown. I would only take a red line through 5 guys right now. Largely all points you made: O'Connell, Sirianni, guys that just can't improve that much, and or if they do improve, it's going to go somewhere. Gannon, definitely Gannon. There's a handful of those guys. That's about it. I'll just note that the Steelers' big free price to win 13 games, which would be a 4-win improvement, 9-1, which means 30-1 for Tomlin to win Coach of the Year, probably EV. So fingers crossed.
Yep, agreed there. All right, we're done. Don't forget to check out NBCsports.com for more information to help you with your wagers. If you're listening to us in podcast form, please don't forget to rate and subscribe. And a reminder to find all your favorite NBC shows on Amazon Music. Just head to amazon.com/NBC Sports. From Jay Croucher, Drew Dinsick, and Herman Marquez, we'll see you soon.